I spent $142 on ingredients for a dinner party that never happened, then was told by my daughter-in-law not to waste the leftovers in the fridge. That's when I finally did the math. In 6 months, my son and daughter-in-law had taken $32,000 from my retirement account. And I'd let them. Before we continue, first let me thank you for watching Granny's Voice. Please subscribe and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We might give you a shout out in our next video. Today's special shout out goes to Mariah from New York. Thank you for being part of our family. Now let me tell everything. The automatic doors of Riverside Market whooshed open, releasing a blast of air-conditioned air that made me shiver despite the June heat. I grabbed a shopping cart, its wheel squeaking in that familiar off-kilter way, and pulled out my phone to check the list Vanessa had sent. At 65, I still wasn't entirely comfortable with text messages and shopping apps, but I'd learned. You had to learn, didn't you? The world moved forward whether you kept up or not. My fingers, slightly arthritic now, fumbled with the screen until Vanessa's message appeared. Mom, emergency. Todd and Melissa are coming for dinner tonight. Completely forgot to tell you. Can you pick up ingredients? Need to impress them. Todd's considering Daniel for partner. Get wild-caught salmon, at least 2 pounds, asparagus, the thin kind, heirloom tomatoes, fresh basil, artisan bread from the bakery section, aged parmesan, the real stuff, not the cheap kind, and maybe some fancy dessert? Thanks. You're a lifesaver. 2 hearts. I read the message 3 times, my stomach tightening with each pass. Wild-caught salmon. Aged parmesan. Fancy dessert. I could practically see the dollar signs adding up. But this was important, wasn't it? Daniel's career. His chance at making partner at the law firm. What was money compared to my son's success? I navigated toward the seafood counter, passing through the produce section where elderly men squeezed avocados and young mothers wrestled toddlers away from candy displays. The normalcy of it all felt surreal. Just 6 months ago, I'd been living in my own small house across town, the one William and I had bought 30 years ago. The one where we'd raised Daniel, where we'd celebrated holidays, where William had taken his last breath in our bedroom with me holding his hand. That was 14 months ago now. 14 months since I'd become a widow. The grief counselor at the community center had said the first year would be the hardest. She'd been right. But she hadn't mentioned what came after. The strange limbo of being alone but not alone, of being needed but not wanted, of existing in the spaces other people created for you. Help you find something. The fishmonger, a young man with a red beard and kind eyes, smiled at me from behind the counter. Yes, I need wild-caught salmon. 2 pounds, please. He nodded and began selecting pieces. Having a party. My daughter-in-law is entertaining. Business dinner. Fancy. He wrapped the salmon carefully, the pink flesh gleaming under the fluorescent lights. That'll be $47.82. I blinked. $47. For fish. But I pulled out my debit card, the one connected to the account William had spent 40 years building. The account that was supposed to keep me comfortable in my old age. The account I'd been dipping into more and more since moving in with Daniel and Vanessa. The asparagus was another $12. The heirloom tomatoes, $7. The artisan bread, $9. The aged parmesan, $16 for a small wedge. By the time I reached the bakery section, my cart was full and my anxiety was climbing. The desserts were displayed like jewelry, delicate pastries with gold leaf, layered cakes with mirror glazes, tarts arranged like works of art. I selected a lemon tart that looked appropriately impressive and tried not to look at the price tag until the last moment. $32. For one tart. At the checkout, a teenager with blue hair and multiple ear piercings scanned my items with practiced efficiency. The total climbed on the screen. $89.45. $103.22. $119.67. $142.83, she announced cheerfully. My hand trembled slightly as I inserted my card. $142. For one meal. That I wouldn't even be eating. The thought came unbidden and I pushed it away, ashamed. This was for Daniel. This was what families did. They helped each other. "Have a great day," the cashier said, handing me my receipt. I mumbled something in response and wheeled my cart toward the exit, the bags heavy with expensive ingredients. Through the windows, I could see the parking lot shimmering with heat. My car, a 12-year-old Honda Civic that William had maintained meticulously, was parked in the far corner. I'd arrived early to beat the crowds, back when I thought this would be a simple grocery run. As I loaded the bags into my trunk, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Vanessa. "Also grab some fresh flowers for the table. Something elegant. And maybe some of those fancy crackers for the cheese course. You know the ones I mean. Thanks." I stood there in the parking lot, the sun beating down on my shoulders, staring at the message. The store was right there. I could go back in. It would only be another $20, maybe $30. But something in me hesitated. I thought about the leftovers in the back of their refrigerator, the ones I'd been quietly eating for the past week. 3-day-old pad thai. Half a pizza from last Thursday. A container of pasta primavera that was starting to smell questionable. "Don't let food go to waste," Vanessa always said, usually while scraping her barely touched meals into containers. "It's practically a sin." Meanwhile, she'd spent $85 on a facial last week. I knew because I'd seen the receipt on the counter. I got into my car without going back inside. Vanessa would have to make do with what I'd already bought. The flowers and fancy crackers could wait. As I drove through the familiar streets toward Daniel and Vanessa's house, toward the place I'd been living for 6 months but couldn't quite think of as home, I tried to remember when things had shifted. When had I stopped being a person and started being a resource? Daniel and Vanessa's house was in Riverside Estates, a development that had gone up 5 years ago with names like the Madison and the Charleston, as if giving houses southern mansion names made them elegant instead of just expensive. Their particular model was the Savannah, a 4-bedroom colonial with white columns and black shutters that looked like every third house on the street. I pulled into the driveway behind Vanessa's Mercedes SUV, last year's model, gleaming white, with a bumper sticker that read Neymaster next to one for Oliver's Montessori preschool. The garage door was closed, which meant Daniel wasn't home yet. He'd been working late more often recently, chasing that partnership Vanessa kept mentioning. Sometimes I wondered if he was really at the office or just avoiding the tension that seemed to permeate the house like humidity. I gathered the grocery bags, 6 in total, heavy and awkward, and made my way to the side door. The keypad beeped as I entered the code. Vanessa had changed it twice since I moved in, for security, and I stepped into the mudroom. The house was silent. No sign of Oliver, my 3-year-old grandson, whose presence usually filled the space with toy trucks and picture books and endless questions. No sign of Vanessa either, though her car was here. "Hello," I called out, setting the bags on the kitchen counter. No response. I began unpacking, arranging the expensive ingredients on the marble countertop. The kitchen was Vanessa's pride and joy, renovated last year with white cabinets, gold hardware, and that marble she'd agonized over for weeks. Carrara or Calicata? It's such an important decision, Margaret. They'd spent $30,000 on the kitchen. I knew because Daniel had mentioned it, his voice tight with stress, when I'd offered to help with the costs. "No, Mom, we've got it handled," he'd said, but I'd seen the credit card bills on the counter. The minimum payments alone were more than my monthly Social Security check. As I put the salmon in the refrigerator, I noticed the shelves. The top shelf held Vanessa's kombucha collection, 8 bottles at $4 each. The second shelf had Daniel's craft beers, a variety pack from some local brewery. The third shelf held organic milk, grass-fed butter, free-range eggs, artisan cheeses. And in the back, pushed against the wall, were my leftovers. 4 containers, all with dates written on them in my careful handwriting. 3 days old. 5 days old. A week old. I stood there, door open, cold air washing over me, and something tight formed in my chest. "Oh good, you're back." I jumped, nearly dropping the asparagus. Vanessa had appeared in the doorway, dressed in yoga pants and a sports bra, her skin glowing with post-workout sheen. She had her phone in one hand and a green smoothie in the other. "I didn't hear you come in," I said, putting a hand to my chest. Just finished my Peloton session. 45 minutes, almost died. She took a long drink of her smoothie. Did you get everything? Yes, it's all here. Vanessa came over to inspect the bags, nodding approvingly at each item. Perfect. Oh, this salmon looks amazing. And you got the good parmesan. Thank God, I can't stand when people use the fake stuff. I thought about the $16 that wedge of cheese had cost. About how it was more than I'd spent on groceries for myself in the past 2 weeks. So what time should I start cooking? I asked. Vanessa was scrolling through her phone, barely paying attention. Oh, actually, change of plans. I waited. Melissa texted. She got food poisoning from lunch. Some sushi place downtown. Can you believe it? So dinner's off. The words took a moment to register. Off. Yeah, postponed. Probably reschedule for next week sometime. Vanessa grabbed a water bottle from the fridge. Don't worry, we'll use the ingredients eventually. But the salmon won't keep. Just freeze it. Or cook it tomorrow if you want. She was already walking away. I'm going to shower. Oh, and Mom. I turned to look at her. Don't forget to finish the leftovers in the fridge. We can't afford to waste food. She disappeared upstairs, and I stood there in the silent kitchen, surrounded by $142 worth of ingredients for a meal that wasn't going to happen, while being told to eat leftovers so nothing would go to waste. The irony wasn't lost on me. Neither was the casual cruelty of it. I'd been living in what Vanessa called the guest room for 6 months. In reality, it was a storage room they'd converted when I moved in, a windowless space on the first floor, originally designed as a home office or maybe a pantry. It was barely 10 by 10 feet, with just enough room for a twin bed, a small dresser, and a narrow bookshelf. There was no closet, so my clothes hung on a rack in the corner, visible every time I opened the door. The walls were still the builder's basic beige, and the carpet smelled faintly of must, no matter how much I aired the room out. Meanwhile, the actual guest room upstairs had been converted into Vanessa's home gym, complete with a Peloton, a weight rack, a yoga area, and a full-length mirror. I'd seen it once, when Vanessa had given a virtual tour to her sister via FaceTime. This is my wellness space, she'd said, panning the camera around the bright, airy room with its large windows and hardwood floors. I need it for my mental health. I'd said nothing. What was there to say? Now, after putting away the groceries and cleaning the kitchen, Vanessa had left her breakfast dishes in the sink, I retreated to my room and closed the door. The walls felt like they were pressing in. I sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress sagging from years of use, another hammer-down, and pulled out my phone. My banking app took a moment to load, and when it did, I navigated to my checking account. The balance made my stomach drop. $43,847.22. 6 months ago, when I'd moved in, it had been $76,521.33. I'd lost over $30,000 in half a year. My hands shaking, I clicked on the transaction history. The past scrolled by in a damning parade of purchases. Riverside Market, $157.43, Riverside Market, $203.16, Oliver's Montessori Academy, $1,200, Riverside Electric Company, $287.56, City Water Department, $124.33, Amazon.com, $347.82, Target, $156.73, PetSmart, $87.42, for a dog they didn't even have. On and on it went. Groceries, utilities, household supplies, Oliver's activities, even their lawn service and pool maintenance. All charged to my account. All taken from the money William had carefully saved, investment by investment, paycheck by paycheck. Just until we get on our feet, Daniel had said when I moved in. The house expenses are a lot, and with the renovation loan, it would really help if you could contribute to groceries and utilities. Temporarily. Temporarily had become 6 months. 6 months of watching my life savings drain away while Daniel and Vanessa saved their considerable combined income, He was a senior associate at a law firm, she was a marketing director, for investments and vacations and Vanessa's wellness expenses. I clicked over to my savings account. $18,432.09. That was it. That was what remained of 40 years of William's work. Of our careful budgeting, our sacrifices, our dreams of a comfortable retirement. At this rate, I'd be broke in less than 2 years. And then what? The question hovered in the air like a spectre. I'd seen enough stories on the news, read enough articles, heard enough whispers at the senior center. What happened to elderly people when their money ran out? When they became too expensive, too burdensome, too much trouble? A knock on the door made me jump. I quickly closed the banking app as if I'd been caught doing something wrong. Come in. The door opened to reveal Oliver, still in his Montessori uniform, tiny khaki pants and a polo shirt with the school logo. His face lit up when he saw me. "Grandma, you're home." He launched himself at me, and I caught him in a hug, breathing in the scent of playground and fruit snacks and that indefinable little boy smell that always made my heart squeeze. "Hi, sweetheart. How was school?" "We learned about butterflies. And I made you a picture." He thrust a crumpled piece of construction paper at me, covered in crayon drawings that might have been butterflies or possibly aliens. "See? That's you and that's me and we're in a garden. It's beautiful." I smoothed the paper carefully. "I'll put it right here on my bookshelf where I can always see it." Oliver beamed, then noticed my phone. "Were you playing games?" "No, just checking something. Mom says phones rot your brain." He said this with the absolute certainty of a 3-year-old repeating what he'd heard. "Your mom is very wise. Can we make cookies?" I glanced at the time. It was 3:30. Vanessa would still be in the shower, taking her time with her elaborate skincare routine. Daniel wouldn't be home until at least 7. "Let me check with your mom first." "She's in the shower for forever," Oliver said dramatically. "Please. I promise I'll be good. I'll wash my hands and everything." Looking at his eager face, I couldn't say no. Oliver was the reason I'd moved in, really. When Daniel had called 14 months ago, just weeks after William's funeral, he'd painted a picture of need. Vanessa was overwhelmed with work and toddler wrangling. They couldn't afford full-time childcare. Wouldn't it be nice if we were all together? Wouldn't it solve everyone's problems? And I'd been so desperately lonely in that empty house, surrounded by William's absence, that I'd said yes. "Okay," I told Oliver. "Let's make cookies. But first, you really do have to wash your hands." His whoop of joy echoed through the small room as he raced toward the kitchen. The kitchen was my favorite part of the house, despite it being Vanessa's domain. There was something soothing about cooking, about the alchemy of transforming simple ingredients into something warm and nourishing. William had always said I should have been a chef. Instead, I'd been a bookkeeper for a small accounting firm, spending my days with numbers instead of recipes. But I'd cooked every night for Daniel, made elaborate birthday cakes, hosted holidays with spreads that took days to prepare. Now I pulled out the ingredients for chocolate chip cookies, a recipe I could make in my sleep. Flour, sugar, butter, eggs, vanilla, chocolate chips. Oliver dragged a chair over to the counter so he could watch. "Can I crack the eggs?" he asked. Very carefully. I handed him an egg and guided his small hands. The shell cracked perfectly, whites and yolks sliding into the bowl with only a few small pieces of shell that I quickly fished out. "I did it," Oliver announced proudly. "You did. You're going to be an excellent cook someday." We worked together, Oliver's concentration absolute as he helped measure flour and stir the batter. His tongue poked out slightly when he focused, just like Daniel used to do at that age. The resemblance was so strong it made my chest ache. "Grandma." "Yes, honey. Why do you sleep in the small room?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "Your room is really small. And it doesn't have windows. Miss Jennifer at school says everyone needs windows because sunshine is important." He looked at me with those wide, innocent eyes. "How do you get sunshine?" "Out of the mouths of babes," as they said. Well, I get sunshine when I go outside. And it's just temporary, remember? I'm just staying here for a little while. How long is a little while? Good question, I thought. I'm not sure yet. I hope it's forever. I like when you're here. He hugged my arm, leaving a smudge of cookie dough on my sleeve. My throat tightened. I like being here with you too. The cookies were just going into the oven when Vanessa appeared, now dressed in athleisure wear that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Her hair was still damp, pulled back in a casual updo that had probably taken 15 minutes to achieve that perfectly careless look. What's going on? She surveyed the scene, the mixing bowls, the flour dusting the counter, Oliver's chocolate-smeared face. We're making cookies, Oliver announced. Vanessa's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Oliver, you know cookies aren't on your nutrition plan. Dr. Morrison said we need to watch your sugar intake. But Grandma said. Grandma doesn't make the rules about your health. Vanessa's tone was pleasant but firm. She turned to me. Margaret, I appreciate the thought, but we're trying to establish healthy eating habits. They're just cookies, Vanessa. I used to make them with Daniel all the time. And look how that turned out. He's been struggling with his weight for years. She began wiping down the counter with quick, efficient movements. I'd rather not set Oliver up for the same issues. The implication hung in the air. I had failed as a parent. My son was imperfect, therefore I was imperfect. I wanted to argue. Wanted to point out that Daniel was a successful lawyer, a good man, a loving father. That a childhood of homemade cookies hadn't ruined his life. But I'd learned over the past 6 months that arguing with Vanessa was like arguing with water. It simply flowed around your objections and continued on its path. I'm sorry, I said instead. I should have asked first. Oliver's face crumpled. But I want cookies. You can have one, Vanessa conceded. One. And then carrot sticks for your snack. Deal. Deal, Oliver muttered, looking betrayed. Vanessa turned to me. Oh, and Margaret. Daniel called. He's going to be even later than expected. Some client emergency. Can you make dinner for Oliver? Nothing too heavy. Maybe that quinoa bowl recipe I sent you. She'd sent it weeks ago. A complicated recipe with 17 ingredients and multiple cooking methods. I'd looked at it once and felt exhausted. Actually, I was thinking of using that salmon. God, no. Way too fancy for a 3-year-old. Just do the quinoa bowl. All the ingredients should be in the pantry. She grabbed her keys from the counter. I'm meeting Stephanie for dinner. Girls' night. We're trying that new tapas place. But I thought the dinner party was cancelled. It is. That's why I can go out. She kissed Oliver's head, leaving a mark of her lip gloss. Be good for Grandma. Mommy will be back after bedtime. And she was gone, the door closing behind her with a soft click. Oliver and I looked at each other. Quinoa bowl? He asked hopefully. How about grilled cheese and tomato soup? His face transformed. Yes. We ate dinner together at the kitchen table, Oliver chattering about butterflies and his friend Mason who could do a backflip and his teacher Miss Jennifer who was nice except when kids didn't listen. I let him have a second cookie, swearing him to secrecy. After dinner, we played trucks in the living room, then I gave him a bath and read him 3 stories. By the time I tucked him in, his eyes were already drooping. Love you, Grandma, he mumbled, clutching his stuffed elephant. Love you too, sweetheart. I stood in his doorway for a moment, watching him sleep. The night light cast shadows on the walls decorated with expensive decals and custom art, in a room that was bigger than mine, filled with more toys than any child could need. This was why I stayed. This little boy who loved me unconditionally, who didn't care about money or obligations or complicated family dynamics. Who just wanted cookies and stories and someone to play trucks with. But was it enough? Daniel didn't get home until nearly 11. I was still awake, sitting in the living room with a book I wasn't really reading. I'd been thinking instead, my mind circling the same questions over and over. Mom, you're still up? He looked exhausted, his tie loosened, his face drawn. Couldn't sleep. How was the emergency? He sank onto the couch with a heavy sigh. Frustrating. Client changing their mind about plea negotiations. Again. He rubbed his eyes. Where's Vanessa? Girls' night. She said she'd be late. Right. She mentioned that. He didn't sound happy about it. We sat in silence for a moment. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the tick of the expensive wall clock Vanessa had bought from some designer store. Daniel. Yeah, Mom. Can we talk about something? He turned to look at me, and I saw a flicker of wariness in his eyes. What's wrong? Where to start? I thought. The storage room. The leftovers. The money hemorrhaging from my account while they saved for vacations. I've been tracking my expenses since I moved in. His expression shifted, guilt, defensiveness, resignation all flickering across his face in rapid succession. And, he asked carefully, I've spent over $30,000 in 6 months. The number sat between us like a living thing. That can't be right, Daniel said, but his voice lacked conviction. It is. I checked. Groceries, utilities, Oliver's school, household expenses, all charged to my account. I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app, holding it out to him. Look. He didn't take the phone at first. Just stared at it like it might bite him. Then, slowly, he reached for it and began scrolling. I watched his face as the reality sank in, the long list of charges, the dwindling balance. Jesus, he whispered. You and Vanessa make over $200,000 a year, Daniel. I've looked at the mail that comes through. I've seen the statements you leave on the counter. Why am I paying for everything? It was supposed to be temporary. It's been 6 months. At this rate, I'll be broke in less than 2 years. What happens then? Daniel handed my phone back like it burned. He stood up, began pacing. I didn't realize it had gotten this bad. Vanessa handles the finances mostly, and I've been so focused on work. So Vanessa's been charging everything to my card. We pooled resources. You said you wanted to contribute. My fair share, Daniel. Not everything. Not while you two save your salaries and take vacations and buy luxury items. My voice was rising, and I forced myself to speak calmly. Today, Vanessa had me spend $142 on ingredients for a dinner party that got cancelled. Then she told me not to forget to eat the leftovers in the fridge so nothing would go to waste. Daniel's face went pale. She said that. Word for word. He sank back onto the couch, his head in his hands. Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Didn't know, or didn't want to know. The question hit its mark. Daniel flinched. Both, maybe. Things have been complicated. Complicated how? He was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. The renovation last year, the kitchen, the bathrooms, the landscaping, it cost more than we budgeted. A lot more. We took out a home equity loan, and the payments are significant. How significant? $3,000 a month. I did the math in my head. $36,000 a year. Plus their mortgage, plus their cars, plus Vanessa's spending habits. You're in debt, I said. We're managing, Daniel said defensively. With my potential partnership, the salary increase will help. We just need to get through the next year or two. On my retirement savings. It was supposed to help both of us. You needed a place to live, we needed financial help. Daniel. I waited until he looked at me. Be honest. Was I ever going to pay rent? Or were you always planning to use my savings to cover your lifestyle? His silence was answer enough. The front door opened, and Vanessa's laugh floated in, followed by her slightly unsteady footsteps. She'd been drinking. She appeared in the doorway, her face flushed, looking between us with sudden alertness. What's going on? Why do you both look so serious? We need to talk, Daniel said. Now. It's almost midnight. Now, Vanessa. Something in his tone made her pause. She set down her purse carefully, smoothed her hair, and sat in the armchair across from us. Fine. Talk. I let Daniel explain. Watched Vanessa's expression cycle through confusion, defensiveness, and finally, calculation. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed, a short, sharp sound. Are you seriously upset about money right now? After everything we've done for you? Everything you've done? I repeated. We took you in when you had nowhere else to go. We gave you a room, included you in our family, let you be part of Oliver's life. She ticked off points on her perfectly manicured fingers. You said you wanted to contribute. We let you. Let me. The audacity of it took my breath away. Vanessa, you've been systematically draining my retirement account while saving your own money. That's how families work. You pool resources, you help each other. She turned to Daniel. Tell her. But Daniel was staring at his wife like he'd never seen her before. Vanessa, Mom spent over $30,000 in 6 months. So, she lives here. She eats our food, uses our utilities. In a storage room with no windows, I said quietly, while you converted the actual guest room into a gym. Vanessa's eyes flashed. I need that space for my mental health. I've told you. And I need financial security for my future. Do you understand what you've done? That money was supposed to last me for the rest of my life. Oh, please. You'll be fine. You have social security, pensions, which barely cover basic expenses. The savings were my safety net. Were. Then maybe you should have thought of that before you agreed to move in with us. Vanessa stood up, her voice cold. We didn't force you. You wanted to be here, wanted to be part of Oliver's life. Well, this is what that costs. The mask had finally dropped. This was who she really was, not the sweet daughter-in-law who called me Mom and asked for recipes, but this calculating woman who saw me as a resource to be exploited. Vanessa, that's enough, Daniel said, his voice hard. No, Daniel, it's not. I'm tired of pretending. Your mother has been judging us for months, our spending, our parenting, our lifestyle. Well, she's been living in that lifestyle rent-free. Rent-free. I couldn't help the bitter laugh. I've paid over $30,000. For groceries you ate, utilities you used, your grandson's education. That you would have paid anyway. Vanessa's face twisted. Maybe. But we didn't have to let you live here at all. The truth of it, the cruelty of it, hung in the air. Daniel stood up slowly. Vanessa. Bedroom. Now. But. Now. They disappeared upstairs, and I sat alone in the living room, trembling. I could hear their voices through the ceiling, raised, angry, incomprehensible words that probably boiled down to the same argument couples had been having forever. Money, family, obligation, resentment. I pulled out my phone and called the one person I knew would answer at midnight. Hello. Ruth's voice was sleepy but alert. Ruth had been my friend since college, the kind of friend who knew all your secrets and loved you anyway. Ruth, it's Margaret. I'm sorry to call so late. What's wrong? And I told her everything. The money, the room, the leftovers, the conversation I'd just had. She listened without interrupting, making small sounds of sympathy and outrage in all the right places. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then, you need to leave. I can't just. Yes, you can. Margaret, this is financial abuse. Elder abuse. I've seen it happen to other people, and it always ends the same way. They'll drain you dry and then act wounded when you have nothing left to give. But Oliver will still be your grandson no matter where you live. But you won't be able to help him if you're destitute. Ruth's voice softened. Where do you want to be, Margaret? Really? I thought about my windowless room. About eating leftovers while shopping for $100 meals. About watching my savings disappear while being treated like a burden. Anywhere but here, I whispered. Then come to me. Tonight if you need to. Tomorrow if you can wait. But don't stay there and let them destroy your future. We talked for another hour, making plans. Ruth lived across town in a modest apartment complex, nothing fancy, but clean and safe. She had a spare room I could use while I figured things out. There were senior living communities nearby that we could look at. Options. Possibilities. Hope. When I finally hung up, the house was quiet again. Daniel and Vanessa's argument had either ended or moved to whispers. I sat in the dark living room, looking at the expensive furniture and designer touches and family photos that somehow didn't include me. And I made a decision. I woke early, just after dawn, having barely slept. The house was silent. Through my closed door, I could hear the faint hum of the coffee maker on its timer. One of those smart machines that Vanessa had programmed to brew at exactly 6:15 every morning. I dressed quietly in comfortable clothes and began to pack. Not everything, I didn't want to be obvious, but essentials. A few changes of clothes. Toiletries. My laptop. The photo albums I'd brought with me, filled with pictures of William, of Daniel's childhood, of a life that felt increasingly distant. At the bottom of my drawer, wrapped in a silk scarf, was my jewelry. William's mother's engagement ring, which he'd given me on our 30th anniversary. A pearl necklace from our 25th. My wedding band, which I still wore despite the indentation it had left after 42 years. Small things, but valuable, both monetarily and sentimentally. I packed them carefully in my suitcase. By 7, I heard movement upstairs. Footsteps. Running water. The sounds of a house waking up. I went to the kitchen and made coffee, standing at the window while it brewed. The backyard was beautiful in the morning light, professionally landscaped with native plants and a stone patio, a playset for Oliver in the corner. They'd spent $15,000 on the landscaping alone. I knew because I'd seen the invoice when it came through. Mom. I turned to find Daniel in the doorway, dressed for work but looking like he hadn't slept at all. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face haggard. Coffee. I offered. Please. I poured 2 cups and we sat at the kitchen island, not speaking at first. The silence stretched between us, thick with everything unsaid. I'm sorry, Daniel finally said. About last night. About everything. I wrapped my hands around my coffee mug, feeling the warmth seep into my palms. What did Vanessa say after I left? He gave a hollow laugh. A lot of things. Most of them not very nice. He paused. About you. About me. About our marriage. I'm sorry. Don't be. You were right to call us out. He stared into his coffee. I've been avoiding looking at the finances. It was easier to let Vanessa handle everything, to not ask questions, to just coast. But seeing those numbers last night, Mom, I had no idea it was that bad. Didn't you though? I asked gently. On some level. He was quiet for a long moment. Maybe. I knew we were using your card for groceries and utilities. I just didn't let myself think about what that meant, about what it was costing you. He looked up, his eyes wet. I'm my father's son. He taught me better than this. The mention of William made my throat tight. Your father would want you to be happy, but not at my expense. I know. Daniel scrubbed his face with his hands. Vanessa and I talked until 3 in the morning. Actually talked, for the first time in months. There's a lot wrong with our marriage, Mom. Money is just the symptom. Are you going to be okay? I don't know. Maybe. We're going to try counseling. He gave me a searching look. But that's not really your problem to fix, is it? You're my son. Your problems are always my problems. But they shouldn't be your financial ruin. He pulled out his phone and began tapping. I'm transferring $15,000 to your account right now. It's not everything, but it's what I can do immediately without Vanessa noticing. Consider it back payment for rent you never should have been charged. Daniel, you don't have to. Yes, I do. And there will be more. I'm going to sit down with Vanessa this weekend and restructure everything. No more charges to your account. We'll figure out our own mess. My phone buzzed with a notification. I checked it. The transfer had already gone through. $15,000, returned just like that. Thank you, I said softly. It's not enough. It'll never be enough to make up for how we've treated you. He reached across and took my hand. Are you leaving? I looked at him in surprise. How did you? Your suitcase. I saw it when I went past your room this morning. The door was open. No point in lying. I called Ruth last night. She offered me her spare room while I figure things out. When? Today. This morning. Daniel nodded slowly, his jaw working. I understand. I do. But can I ask something? Of course. Don't disappear from Oliver's life. Please. Whatever happens between Vanessa and me, whatever mess we've made, he loves you. He needs you. I would never abandon Oliver. I know. I had to say it. He stood up, straightening his tie with shaking hands. I have to get to work. But Mom, I'm going to fix this. However long it takes, whatever I have to do, I'm going to make this right. I stood and hugged him, this man who was still my little boy somewhere underneath the suits and stress and bad decisions. I know you will. After he left, I sat alone in the kitchen, drinking my coffee and watching the sun climb higher. Upstairs, I could hear Vanessa moving around, the shower running, drawers opening and closing. She didn't come down. At 8:30, I heard Oliver's voice, that high, happy morning chatter. I went upstairs and found him in his room, still in his pajamas, building something elaborate with blocks. Grandma, look, I made a castle. It's wonderful, sweetie. I sat on the floor beside him. Oliver, can Grandma talk to you about something? Okay. He kept building, adding another block to the tower. You know how sometimes people stay at other people's houses for a visit? Like when I stayed at Nana and Pop Pop's house. Exactly like that. Well, Grandma has been visiting your house, but now I need to go stay somewhere else for a while. The tower of blocks paused. You're leaving. I'm going to stay with my friend Ruth. But I'm not leaving you. I'll come visit all the time, and you can come visit me. We'll still see each other. Oliver's lower lip trembled. But I want you here. I know, sweetheart. I want to be here too. But sometimes grown-ups have to make changes. I pulled him into my lap. Nothing changes how much I love you. Understand? He nodded against my chest, and I felt his small body shake with silent tears. Vanessa appeared in the doorway. Oliver, time to get dressed for school. But Grandma's leaving. I know. But you still have school. Vanessa's voice was flat, her face carefully blank. She looked at me. I'm taking him to school early. I assume you'll be gone when we get back. Yes. Fine. She turned to Oliver. Come on, buddy. Let's pick out an outfit. Oliver clung to me for another moment before Vanessa gently extracted him. I watched them go, hearing her murmur to him in the hallway. Words I couldn't make out, but that sounded, surprisingly, kind. I went back to my room and finished packing. Ruth lived in Oakmorn Terrace, a 3-story apartment building built in the 70s and showing its age. The carpets in the hallway were worn, the elevator creaked, and the walls could use fresh paint. But when Ruth opened her door, smiling wide and pulling me into a hug, it felt more like home than anywhere had in months. Come in, come in. Don't just stand there. Her apartment was small, a 2-bedroom with a galley kitchen and a living room crowded with bookshelves. But it was lived in and comfortable, with mismatched furniture and plants on every surface and photos covering the walls. Photos of her late husband, Gerald, of her scattered grandchildren, of trips taken and memories made. The spare room is this way. Ruth led me down a short hallway. It's not much, but it's yours for as long as you need it. The room was tiny, barely big enough for a double bed and a small dresser. But it had a window that overlooked a courtyard with trees, and morning light streamed through the glass, warm and golden. It's perfect, I said, meaning it. Bathrooms across the hall. We'll have to share, but I'm not fussy. Ruth sat on the edge of the bed while I set down my suitcase. So, tell me what happened this morning. I filled her in, The conversation with Daniel, the transfer, saying goodbye to Oliver, Vanessa's cold farewell. Ruth listened with her characteristic intensity, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Daniel did the right thing with that transfer. It's a start. It is. But Ruth, even with 15,000 back, I've still lost more than half of what I had 6 months ago. I know. That's why we're going to be smart about this. She pulled out a notebook. Ruth still preferred paper to digital. Let's make a plan. First priority. Housing. You can stay here as long as you need, but I assume you want your own place eventually. I don't want to impose. You're not imposing. You're family. But I also know you, Margaret Chen. You won't feel settled until you have your own space. Ruth clicked her pen. There are several senior living communities within 20 minutes. Some are independent living. Some have assisted care options. I've already printed out information on 3 of them. She handed me a folder, and I paged through it with growing interest. The communities looked nothing like nursing homes. They were apartment complexes designed for seniors, with amenities, activities, and social opportunities. These look expensive. Some are. But look at Riverside Gardens, that's the 3rd one. It's income-based. With your Social Security and William's pension, you'd qualify for their moderate tier. 2-bedroom apartment, all utilities included, activities coordinator, shuttle service. $900 a month. $900. That was manageable. That was sustainable. How did you find all this so fast? Ruth smiled. I've been researching since you called last night. I know you, Margaret. Once you make up your mind, you move fast. Figured you'd need options ready. I looked at my friend, this woman who'd known me for over 40 years, who'd been at my wedding and at William's funeral, who'd never judged me for the choices I'd made, and felt tears prick my eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We have a lot of work to do. Ruth flipped to a new page. Next priority. Protecting your remaining assets. We're getting you a consultation with a financial advisor. There are strategies for elder financial protection, trusts you can set up, ways to make sure this never happens again. I don't even know where to start looking. Already handled. My nephew Marcus is a financial planner. He's agreed to see you tomorrow morning. No charge for the initial consultation. Family rate after that if you decide to work with him. Ruth. And 3rd, she continued, ignoring my protests, we're going to get you connected. You've been isolated at Daniel's house, and isolation makes people vulnerable. There's a senior center 2 blocks from here. They have activities every day, exercise classes, book clubs, craft groups, volunteer opportunities. You're going to start going. I don't know if I'm ready. You don't have to be ready. You just have to show up. Ruth set down her notebook and took my hands. Margaret, you've spent 6 months shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's life. It's time to build your own again. We spent the rest of the day unpacking my things and settling me into the spare room. It wasn't much, my clothes fit easily in the small closet, my few books lined up on the windowsill, but it was mine. No one would tell me to eat leftovers here. No one would drain my bank account. That evening, Ruth made dinner, nothing fancy, just spaghetti and salad, and we ate together at her small dining table, talking about everything and nothing. Her grandchildren. The book she was reading. The neighbor downstairs who played jazz piano at odd hours. Tell me about William, Ruth said suddenly. What about him? What would he say about all this? If he were here. I thought about my husband, steady, practical William who'd worked as an engineer for 40 years and never made a decision without considering all angles. Who'd loved Daniel fiercely but had never been afraid to tell him when he was wrong. He'd be disappointed in Daniel. But he'd also understand how it happened, the slow slide into poor decisions, the rationalization, the avoidance. I pushed spaghetti around my plate. William always said the hardest part of parenting was letting your children make mistakes. Even when those mistakes hurt you. Wise man. He was. God, I miss him. I know. Ruth reached across and squeezed my hand. But he'd be proud of you for leaving. For standing up for yourself. Would he? Or would he think I was abandoning our son? Margaret. Ruth waited until I looked at her. You didn't abandon Daniel. You established boundaries. There's a difference. We cleaned up together, falling into an easy rhythm, Ruth washing, me drying. Through the window, I could see the courtyard below, where a few residents sat on benches in the evening light. An elderly man was feeding birds. A woman in a wheelchair read a book. Normal people, living normal lives. When had my life stopped being normal? 6 months ago, I realized. When I'd agreed to move in with Daniel and Vanessa. When I'd let grief and loneliness override my common sense. But it wasn't too late to fix it. The next morning, Ruth drove me to Marcus Webb's office in her ancient Subaru that smelled faintly of lavender and coffee. Marcus worked out of a modest building near the university, sharing space with several other independent financial advisors. Aunt Ruth. He greeted us warmly, a tall man in his early 40s with Ruth's sharp eyes and genuine smile. And you must be Mrs. Chen. Margaret, please. His office was cluttered with files and had a whiteboard covered in complex formulas, but he cleared space for us on the couch and pulled up a chair, tablet in hand. Aunt Ruth gave me the overview, but I'd like to hear it from you. Start from the beginning. So I told the story again. William's death. The loneliness. Daniel's invitation. The gradual realization that my savings were disappearing. The confrontation. The escape. Marcus took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment, studying his tablet. Okay, he said finally. The good news is you caught this before you were completely drained. The bad news is you've lost a significant portion of your retirement savings. With the $15,000 Daniel returned, you're at roughly $60,000 total, checking and savings combined. Is that correct? Yes. And your monthly income is? Social Security is $1,400. William's pension is $800. So $2,200 total. Marcus nodded, typing. Expenses. I'm not sure anymore. At Daniel's, I was spending. No, I mean going forward. What do you realistically need to live on? Ruth jumped in. We're looking at senior living communities. Riverside Gardens is $900 a month, utilities included. Good choice. I know that community, well managed, financially stable. Marcus made more notes. So $900 for housing. Let's say $300 for food, $200 for healthcare costs not covered by Medicare, $100 for transportation, $100 miscellaneous. That's $1,600 a month, leaving you $600 as a cushion. He looked up. Tight, but doable. The key is protecting your remaining savings so you have emergency funds. Here's what I recommend. He spent the next hour walking me through strategies. Setting up a trust so my assets were protected. Creating a separate account that only I could access. Establishing a monthly budget and sticking to it. Looking into long-term care insurance. One more thing, Marcus said as we were wrapping up. Have you considered legal action against your son and daughter-in-law? The question caught me off guard. Legal action. What they did, systematically charging expenses to your account without full disclosure, potentially under coercive circumstances given your grief state, that's elder financial abuse. It's a crime in this state. I'm not going to sue my own son. I'm not suggesting you should. But I want you to know it's an option. Marcus leaned forward. Margaret, in my experience, financial abuse cases like this rarely happen just once. If Daniel and Vanessa are willing to drain your savings now, what happens when you're 80, 85? When you're more vulnerable? Daniel transferred $15,000 back. Which is admirable. But it's also only half of what you lost. Where's the other $15,000? Where's the accountability? The question hung in the air, uncomfortable and necessary. I'll think about it, I said finally. That's all I ask. In the meantime, let's get your assets protected. Can you come back next week to sign papers? We scheduled a follow-up appointment. As Ruth and I were leaving, Marcus called out, Margaret. I turned back. My aunt thinks the world of you. Anyone Ruth loves is family to me. If you need anything at all, you call. Understood. The kindness in his voice made my eyes prick with tears. Understood. Thank you. In the car, Ruth was quiet for a few blocks before asking, "Are you okay?" "I think so. It's just a lot to process." "Marcus is right, you know. About the legal aspect." "I know. But Ruth, he's my son. How do I take legal action against my own child?" "Maybe you don't. Maybe just the threat of it is enough to keep him honest going forward." Ruth navigated through traffic with the ease of long practice. "I'm not saying run to a lawyer tomorrow. But keep it in your back pocket. Protection, not punishment." She pulled up to a small building with a sign reading Riverside Senior Center. "We're here." "Here. I thought we were going back to your apartment." "We are. After this." Ruth turned off the engine. "Remember what I said yesterday? About getting connected? This is step 1. The Riverside Senior Center smelled like coffee and furniture polish, with undertones of old books and craft supplies. The main room was large and open, with tables scattered throughout, some occupied by people playing cards, others by people working on jigsaw puzzles or reading. Along one wall was a kitchenette. Along another, a bulletin board covered with flyers and announcements. A woman in her 60s approached us, wearing a name tag that read Diane, Activities Coordinator. "Ruth. Good to see you. Is this the friend you mentioned?" "Diane. Meet Margaret Chen." "Margaret, Diane runs this place." Diane had a firm handshake and assessing eyes. "Welcome, Margaret. First time?" "Yes." "Well, let me give you the tour." She led us through the center, pointing out different areas. "We have activities Monday through Friday, 9 to 4. Weekends are open for drop-in, but no formal programming. We do exercise classes 3 mornings a week, chair yoga, strength training, water aerobics at the pool down the street. We have a book club, a knitting circle, a men's poker group, art classes." "It's a lot," I said, feeling overwhelmed. "You don't have to do everything. Most people find 1 or 2 things they love and stick with those." Diane stopped at the bulletin board. "This is our community board. People post about events, rides needed, items for sale, that kind of thing. We're big on carpooling here, a lot of folks don't drive anymore." I scanned the board. Among the announcements for bingo nights and blood pressure screenings, one flyer caught my eye: "Volunteer readers needed, Riverside Elementary School." "What's this?" "Oh, that's a great program. The elementary school partners with us. Seniors go in once a week to read to kids or help with literacy. Very popular." I thought of Oliver, of reading him stories at bedtime, and felt a pang. "How do I sign up?" Diane's face lit up. "Really? That's wonderful. I'll get you the coordinator's information. They do background checks, of course, but that usually takes just a week or 2. She continued the tour, showing me the small library, the computer room, the craft space where several women were working on what looked like a quilting project. "Margaret's also looking for housing," Ruth mentioned. I told her about Riverside Gardens. "Oh, great choice. Several of our members live there." Diane gestured to a woman in the corner, working on a crossword puzzle. "That's Patricia. She moved there 2 years ago and loves it. I'm sure she'd be happy to talk to you about it." After the tour, Diane set me up with a temporary membership card and a schedule of activities. "Come as often as you like. No pressure, no judgment. This is your community if you want it to be." Ruth and I stayed for lunch, a simple meal of soup and sandwiches served cafeteria style for $3. We sat with Patricia, who indeed was happy to talk about Riverside Gardens. "Best decision I ever made," Patricia said. She was a compact woman with short grey hair and paint-stained fingers. "I was living with my daughter and her family, feeling like a burden, you know? Always in the way, always trying to be helpful but just making things more complicated." "That sounds familiar," I said quietly. "The apartment gave me my independence back. I have my own space, My own schedule. My daughter visits, my grandkids come over, but on my terms. Not because they have to, but because they want to. She leaned forward. And the community aspect is wonderful. There's always something going on if you want it, but no pressure if you don't. I've made more friends in 2 years there than I had in the previous 10. Do you ever feel lonely? Sometimes. But that's life at any age, right? The difference is now when I feel lonely, I can walk down to the common room and join a game of cards, or go to the community garden, or call one of my neighbors. I have options. Options. That word again. After lunch, Ruth drove me to Riverside Gardens for a tour. The community was larger than I'd expected. 4 3-story buildings arranged around a central courtyard with gardens, walking paths, and benches. The leasing office was welcoming, staffed by a cheerful woman named Amanda who immediately pulled up availability. We have 3 2-bedrooms available right now, she said, showing me floor plans. All on the 2nd floor, which is nice, not ground level where you might feel vulnerable, but not too high up if the elevator's out. Can I see one? Absolutely. Let me grab keys. The apartment she showed us was in Building C, facing the courtyard. It was modest, about 900 square feet, but bright and clean. The living room was a good size, with a small dining area attached. The kitchen had updated appliances and adequate cabinet space. There were 2 bedrooms, each with a closet, and a bathroom with safety bars already installed. The 2nd bedroom is great for guests or a hobby room, Amanda said. We have a lot of residents who use them as art studios, sewing rooms, that kind of thing. I walked through the empty apartment, imagining my furniture, my books, my life filling these spaces. Through the window, I could see the courtyard below, a few residents walking, one tending the garden plots. What do you think? Ruth asked quietly. I think it feels like possibility, I said. Good answer. We returned to the office, where Amanda walked me through the application process. Credit check, references, first month, and security deposit. The total move-in cost would be $2,700, she said. First month's rent and deposit. If your application is approved, you could move in as early as next week. $2,700. A significant chunk of my remaining savings, but also an investment in my future. I'd like to apply, I heard myself say. Amanda beamed. Wonderful. Let me get you the paperwork. That evening, back at Ruth's apartment, I was filling out the Riverside Gardens application when my phone rang. Daniel. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Hi, sweetheart. Mom. His voice was strained. How are you? Where are you? I'm fine. I'm staying with Ruth. I figured. I called her number earlier, but she didn't answer. She was driving. We've been out most of the day. A pause. Doing what? I hesitated, then decided honesty was best. Looking at apartments. Meeting with a financial advisor. Setting up a life. Another pause, longer this time. So you're really not coming back? No, Daniel. I'm not. I heard him take a shaky breath. Oliver cried himself to sleep last night. And again tonight. He keeps asking for you. The words were designed to hurt, to manipulate, and they worked. My chest constricted. I'll come see him. This weekend, if that works. That's not the same as being here. I know it's not. But it's what I can offer right now. Mom, his voice cracked. I know we messed up. I know we took advantage. But we're family. Doesn't that count for something? Of course it does. But Daniel, being family doesn't mean accepting abuse. Abuse. That's a strong word. It's the right word. The financial advisor I met with today called it elder financial abuse. He suggested I could pursue legal action. The silence on the other end was absolute. Are you? Daniel finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. No, but I want you to understand the gravity of what happened. You and Vanessa systematically drained my retirement savings. Whether you meant to or not, whether you rationalized it or not, that's what you did. I know. God, Mom, I know. He sounded like he was crying. I've been going through our finances all day. Really going through them, not just glancing and trusting Vanessa's summaries. Do you know we have 80,000 in credit card debt? 80,000. The renovation, the furniture, Vanessa's shopping, vacations, the cars, it all added up. We've been living on credit and your money, and I didn't let myself see it because if I saw it, I'd have to deal with it. His voice turned bitter. I've been a coward. You've been overwhelmed. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, I failed my wife, I failed my son, and I failed you. Some lawyer I am, can't even manage my own family's affairs. Despite everything, my heart ached for him. Daniel, you can fix this. It'll be hard, but you can do it. How? Counseling, like you mentioned. Get your finances under control. Make a budget and stick to it. Pay off the debt. And, I paused, knowing this would hurt. Stop expecting other people to fund your lifestyle. We're not. You are. You were doing it to me, and you're probably doing it in other ways too. Keeping up with the Joneses, trying to look successful instead of actually being successful. He was quiet. Then, when did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just stopped listening. That surprised a laugh out of him, short and pained, but real. Fair enough. Daniel, I love you. That hasn't changed and it won't change. But I can't live with you and Vanessa. Not now, maybe not ever. I need to build my own life. I understand. I don't like it, but I understand. He cleared his throat. So where are you looking at apartments? I told him about Riverside Gardens, about the senior center, about the plans Ruth and I had made. He listened without interrupting. It sounds good, Mom. It sounds like what you need. It is. Will you let me help? With the move-in costs, with furniture, whatever you need. I almost said no automatically, but stopped myself. This was different, not daily expenses bleeding my account, but help with a specific, legitimate need. That would be nice. Thank you. And Mom, about the money we took, I want to pay back all of it. Not just the 15,000. All 32,000. It might take a while, but I will. I appreciate that. Marcus, the financial advisor, is helping me set up a protected account. Any repayment should go there. Marcus. Ruth's nephew. He's helping me get things organized. That's good. That's really good. Daniel's voice softened. I'm glad you have Ruth. And I'm glad you're taking care of yourself. Even though it means leaving us. I'm not leaving you, sweetheart. I'm just living separately. I know. It just feels like leaving. After we hung up, I sat with the phone in my hands, processing the conversation. It had gone better than expected. Daniel taking responsibility, promising restitution, supporting my decision even though it hurt him. Maybe there was hope for us after all. Ruth appeared with 2 mugs of tea. How'd it go? Better than I feared. He wants to pay back what they took. Actions, not words. We'll see if he follows through. Ruth, you're so cynical. I prefer realistic. She handed me a mug. But I hope I'm wrong. I hope Daniel becomes the man you raised him to be. Me too. We sat together in comfortable silence, sipping tea and watching the evening light fade. Tomorrow I'd submit the application for Riverside Gardens. Tomorrow I'd continue building a new life. But tonight, I was content to sit with my oldest friend, feeling safe and valued for the first time in months. It was enough. The next week passed in a blur of activity. I submitted my application to Riverside Gardens on Wednesday. By Friday, Amanda called to say I'd been approved. Congratulations. You can move in next Saturday. Will that work? Next Saturday. 8 days away. 8 days to pack up my life at Ruth's, to prepare, to make this real. That works perfectly. Great. Come by Monday to sign the lease and bring the move-in payment. We'll have keys ready for you on Saturday morning. After hanging up, I stared at my phone, feeling a mixture of excitement and terror. This was really happening. Ruth found me standing in the middle of her living room, frozen. "What's wrong?" I was approved. "I can move in next Saturday." "That's wonderful. Why do you look terrified?" "Because I am." I sank onto the couch. What if this is a mistake? What if I can't afford it? What if I'm lonely? What if you're happy? Ruth interrupted. "What if this is the best decision you've ever made? What if you thrive? What if I don't?" Ruth sat beside me and took my hand. "Then you deal with it. Margaret, you've dealt with harder things than this. You nursed William through cancer. You buried your husband. You raised a son. You survived 6 months of financial and emotional abuse. You're one of the strongest people I know." "I don't feel strong." "Strong people rarely do. That's not how strength works." She squeezed my hand. "But you don't have to do this alone. I'll help you move. We'll make your apartment beautiful. And I'm 10 minutes away whenever you need me. Promise." "Promise." That weekend, I started acquiring the things I'd need. Ruth took me to thrift stores and consignment shops, helping me pick out a couch, a small dining table, lamps, dishes. Nothing expensive, my budget was tight, but good quality pieces that would make the apartment feel like home. "You know what you need," Ruth said, standing in the middle of a cluttered antique store. "Art. Something that makes you happy to look at." She led me to a section of vintage paintings and prints. Most were unremarkable, but then I saw it, a watercolor of a garden in full bloom, vibrant and joyful. The price tag said $40. "I can't justify $40 on art," I protested. "Can't you? How much did Vanessa's last handbag cost?" $1,200. "Then I'd say $40 on something that will bring you joy every day is an excellent investment." I bought the painting. On Monday, I went to Riverside Gardens to sign the lease and deliver the check. Amanda walked me through each page of the contract, explaining terms and policies. When I signed my name at the bottom, it felt momentous, a declaration of independence. "Welcome home," Amanda said, handing me a welcome packet. "You're going to love it here." That evening, I went to the senior center for the first time by myself. Ruth had a book club meeting elsewhere and encouraged me to go alone. "You need to start building your own community, not just borrowing mine." I almost turned around 3 times before actually walking through the door. Diane was there, naturally, and greeted me warmly. "Margaret, come meet some people." She introduced me to a rotating cast of characters. Tom, a retired postal worker who ran the poker games. Shirley, who organized the knitting circle. Frank and Beatrice, married 62 years and inseparable. Gloria, a former teacher who helped with the reading program at the elementary school. "You're interested in reading to kids, right?" Gloria asked. "I'm coordinating that program. Your background check came through. You're all set to start next week if you want." "Really?" "Really. Tuesday mornings, 9 to 11. You'd work with first and second graders, mostly one-on-one reading practice. Interested?" "Very much." "Perfect. I'll send you the details." After Gloria moved on, I found myself at a table with Frank and Beatrice, who were working on a jigsaw puzzle of a mountain landscape. Sit, Beatrice urged. "We need help with this sky. It's all the same blue." I pulled up a chair and started sorting pieces. We worked in companionable silence for a while before Frank asked, "So what's your story, Margaret?" I gave them the abbreviated version. Widow, lived with son and daughter-in-law, it didn't work out, moving to Riverside Gardens. Beatrice nodded knowingly. "We lived with our daughter for 2 years after Frank's heart attack. Nearly destroyed our relationship with her." "What happened?" "Too much togetherness," Frank said. "We were in each other's space all the time. She was trying to take care of us, we were trying not to be burdens, everyone was stressed. So we moved to Riverside Gardens 5 years ago," Beatrice continued. "Best decision we ever made. Now when we see our daughter, it's because we want to, not because we have to. The relationship is so much better. I hope that's true for Daniel and me, I said. Give it time, Frank advised. These things don't heal overnight. We worked on the puzzle until the center closed at 4, and I was surprised to realize I'd enjoyed myself. These strangers had welcomed me without judgment, without questions, without demands. There was freedom in that. Saturday arrived with unseasonable warmth and clear skies, what William would have called moving weather. Ruth had enlisted her nephew Marcus and his wife Jennifer to help with the heavier items. The 4 of us made several trips from Ruth's apartment to Riverside Gardens, filling my new space with second-hand furniture and thrift store finds. By early afternoon, the basics were in place. The couch and chairs arranged in the living room, the dining table positioned near the kitchen. My bed assembled in the larger bedroom, the smaller one left empty for now. For what, I wasn't quite sure. Guests, maybe. Or a hobby room like Amanda had suggested. Where do you want this? Marcus asked, carrying in a box labeled kitchen. Counter is fine. I'll unpack it later. Jennifer was hanging curtains in the bedroom. Standing on a step stool Ruth was nervously spotting. These are perfect, Margaret. The light blue really brightens the room. They were perfect, found at a consignment shop for $12, slightly faded but clean and cheerful. Combined with the white bedspread Ruth had contributed from her linen closet, the room looked fresh and peaceful. By 3 o'clock, we were done. Ruth insisted on ordering pizza, her treat, and we sat in my new living room eating from paper plates, too tired to care about proper dishes. To new beginnings, Ruth said, raising her can of soda. We all clinked cans, and I felt something tight in my chest finally start to loosen. After they left, promising to check on me tomorrow, I stood alone in my apartment. My apartment. Not Daniel's house. Not Vanessa's space that I was borrowing. Mine. I walked from room to room, running my hands over surfaces, looking out windows, testing the feel of it. The living room with its thrift store couch and the garden watercolor already hung above it. The kitchen with its modest but adequate appliances. The bedroom with its peaceful blue curtains. The second bedroom, empty and full of possibility. It wasn't much. The furniture was used, the decorations sparse. But it was honest. It was within my means. It was mine. I was unpacking books when there was a knock at the door. Through the peephole, I saw a woman about my age holding a covered dish. Hello. I opened the door cautiously. Hi. I'm Helen from 2B, right down the hall. She had a warm smile and grey hair cut in a stylish bob. I heard someone was moving in today and thought you might be too tired to cook. Made extra lasagna. The kindness of it, the simple neighborliness, made my throat tight. That's so thoughtful. Thank you. No problem. I remember my moving day, exhausting. If you need anything, I'm in 2B. I'm usually home in the evenings. I'm Margaret. 2C, obviously. I gestured at my half-unpacked apartment. Nice to meet you, Margaret. I'll let you get back to it. Welcome to the building. After she left, I set the lasagna on the counter and just stood there for a moment, processing the simple act of kindness from a stranger who expected nothing in return. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. How's the move? Can I call? I hesitated, then replied, moved in. Tired but good. Can we talk tomorrow? Sure. Love you, Mom. Love you too. Another text, this one from Oliver's tablet. Vanessa must have helped him. Grandma, I miss you, red heart hash, red heart hash, red heart hash. Followed by a photo he'd drawn. 2 stick figures holding hands, one tall and one small. Me and Oliver, I assumed. I saved the photo and texted back, I miss you too, sweetie. See you soon. That night, I ate Helen's lasagna while sitting at my new dining table, looking out at the courtyard below. A few residents were out walking in the evening light. In the community garden, someone was watering plants. Normal life, peaceful life, unfolding at its own pace. I pulled out my journal, something William had given me years ago that I'd barely used, and started writing. Day 1 in my new apartment. I'm scared and excited and exhausted and hopeful all at once. I don't know what the future holds, but for the first time in months, I feel like I'm the one holding it, not the other way around. William, if you can hear me somehow, I think I'm going to be okay. It took losing almost everything to find myself again. But I'm here. I'm still here. The first week in the apartment was an adjustment. I woke up several times each night, disoriented in the unfamiliar darkness, reaching for William before remembering. Remembering everything, his death, the move to Daniel's, the money, the escape, this new beginning. But gradually, routine emerged. Mornings, I'd make coffee and sit by the window, watching the courtyard wake up. Helen from 2B was an early riser like me, and we'd wave to each other as she left for her morning walk. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I went to the senior center. On my first Tuesday volunteering at Riverside Elementary, I met my assigned student, a 7-year-old named Emma who struggled with reading and had big brown eyes that reminded me of Oliver. "Will you help me?" she asked, handing me a book about a cat who wanted to fly. "Of course, sweetheart." We sat together in a quiet corner of the library, working through the words. Emma was patient with herself, sounding out syllables carefully. When she successfully read a whole page without help, her face lit up with such pure joy that I felt my eyes sting. This, I thought. This is why I'm here. Wednesdays, I attended the senior center's exercise class. Chair yoga led by an impossibly flexible woman named Dorothy who was 73 and could still touch her toes. I couldn't, but I tried, and that felt like progress. Fridays were for the book club at the center. We were reading The Great Gatsby, and the discussions were lively and sometimes contentious. Tom thought Gatsby was a fool. Shirley thought he was romantic. I thought he was a tragic figure who confused money with happiness, a theme that resonated uncomfortably. The rhythm of it felt good. I was busy but not overwhelmed. Engaged but not exhausted. And slowly, I was making friends. Helen and I fell into a pattern of having coffee together on Saturday mornings. She was a retired nurse whose husband had died 5 years ago, and she understood the particular loneliness of widowhood. "Do you have children?" I asked one Saturday. "2 daughters, both across the country. Seattle and Boston." She stirred her coffee. "We talk every week, video chat with the grandkids. They visit once or twice a year. But this," she gestured around the courtyard, "this is my daily life. These are the people I see and talk to and depend on. Do you ever feel guilty about not living near them?" I used to. Then I realized I was allowed to have my own life. Being a mother doesn't mean disappearing into your children's lives. She gave me a knowing look. "I'm guessing you're working through something similar." I told her about Daniel and Vanessa, about the money and the storage room and the leftovers that had finally pushed me over the edge. Helen listened without interrupting, then said simply, "Good for you for leaving. Sometimes I wonder if I should have tried harder to make it work." "Why?" "So they could drain you completely. Margaret, there's a difference between family helping family and family exploiting family. What you described isn't help, it's abuse." That's what the financial advisor said. Then listen to him. Helen set down her mug. "I see it all the time, elderly people sacrificing everything for their adult children who take and take and take. Then when the money runs out, suddenly those devoted children aren't so devoted anymore. Daniel's not like that." "Maybe not. I hope not. But protecting yourself isn't an insult to him. It's basic survival." Her words stayed with me through the rest of the weekend. Sunday, Daniel called to arrange a visit. "Can Oliver and I come by this afternoon? Vanessa has plans, and I thought maybe we could have lunch." "I'd like that." They arrived at noon, Daniel looking worn and Oliver bouncing with barely contained energy. "Grandma, you have a new house." "I do. Want to see it?" I gave them the tour, Oliver exclaiming over everything, the courtyard view, "Can we go down there? The second bedroom, is this my room? The kitchen, can we make cookies?" "This is nice, Mom," Daniel said, and he sounded like he meant it. "Really nice. You've made it homey." "Thank you. It's not much, but it's mine. That's what matters." We made sandwiches together, Oliver helping by arranging chips on plates. Over lunch, Daniel filled me in on the counseling, both financial and marital. The financial counselor laid it all out. We're in significant debt, and we've been living above our means for years. He pushed food around his plate. We've created a debt repayment plan. It's going to take 3 years of serious budgeting to get out of the hole, but it's doable. That's good, Daniel. And the marriage counselor, that's harder. There's a lot of resentment. Vanessa resents me for not making partner yet, for not earning as much as her friends' husbands. I resent her for her spending, for her need to keep up appearances. And me. Where do I fit into all that? He met my eyes. You were convenient. A solution to multiple problems: childcare, household help, financial buffer. And I'm ashamed to say I let it happen. I let you become a resource instead of my mother. The honesty of it hurt, but it was necessary. What about now? Now I'm trying to be better. To see you as a person, not a solution. He paused. I transferred another $5,000 to your protected account yesterday. It's not everything I owe you, but it's progress. $5,000 more. Combined with the earlier 15, that was 20 out of 32,000 returned. More than I'd expected, honestly. Thank you. Don't thank me. It's your money. I'm just returning what I stole. You didn't steal. I did, Mom. Maybe not legally, but morally. Absolutely. He looked at Oliver, who was making a tower out of crackers. I don't want him to grow up thinking that's okay. Using people. Taking advantage of love. After lunch, we went down to the courtyard. Oliver ran around while Daniel and I sat on a bench, watching him play. Are you happy here? Daniel asked. I think so. It's still new, but yes. I feel lighter. That's good. You deserve that. He was quiet for a moment. Vanessa asked if she could come next time. To apologize properly. I tensed. I don't know if I'm ready for that. That's okay. There's no rush. I just wanted you to know, she asked. He watched Oliver climb on the playground equipment. She's trying, in her way. The counselor is helping her see how her behavior affected you. Is she really trying, or is she just going through the motions? Honestly, I'm not sure yet. But I'm watching. If she's not genuine, if she's just performing contrition, I'll know. And then what? Daniel's jaw tightened. Then I have some hard decisions to make about my marriage. We left it at that. By the 6-week mark, I'd settled into a rhythm that felt sustainable. My savings had stabilized, no longer hemorrhaging, actually growing slightly as I stuck to my budget. Daniel had transferred 2 more payments, bringing his repayment total to $28,000. Only $4,000 left to go. At the senior center, I'd become part of the Tuesday volunteer reading crew. Emma was progressing beautifully. We'd moved from simple readers to chapter books, and her confidence was soaring. Mrs. Chen, watch, she said one Tuesday, reading an entire page without hesitation. Emma, that was perfect. I'm so proud of you. She beamed, and her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, pulled me aside afterward. Whatever you're doing with Emma is working. She's improved more in 6 weeks than she did all last year. The praise warmed me. I was making a difference. I was needed, not in the exhausting, exploitative way I'd been needed at Daniel's, but in a healthy, reciprocal way. I gave my time and attention, and I received purpose and joy in return. At Riverside Gardens, I'd connected with several neighbors beyond Helen. There was George in 3A, a retired professor who hosted chess games on Friday evenings. Maria in 1C, who organized monthly potlucks in the community room. The complex was full of people living full, engaged lives, not waiting to die, but actively living. I'd even started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. The second bedroom had become my studio, with an easel set up by the window and a small table for supplies. Nothing fancy, just watercolors and cheap brushes. But the act of creating something beautiful was healing in ways I hadn't expected. One Thursday evening, I was working on a painting of the courtyard garden when my phone rang. Vanessa. I stared at the screen, my heart rate increasing. We hadn't spoken since I'd left, only exchanged polite texts when coordinating Daniel's visits with Oliver. I answered on the fourth ring. "Hello, Vanessa." "Margaret." "Hi." She sounded nervous. "Do you have a minute?" "I suppose." I wanted to apologize. Properly. Not in a text or through Daniel, but directly to you. I set down my paintbrush and moved to the couch, needing to sit for this. "I'm listening." "What I did, was wrong. I took advantage of your grief and your love for Daniel and Oliver. I treated you like staff. Like you existed to serve us. And I justified it by telling myself you were family, that this was just what families did." Her voice cracked. "But it wasn't family. It was exploitation." The words were right, but I'd learned to be cautious. "Did your therapist help you write this?" A pause. "Yes. We practiced what I would say. But that doesn't make it less true, Margaret. I'm not good at apologies, I'm not good at being wrong. But I was wrong. Deeply, horribly wrong." "Why?" I asked. "Why did you do it?" "Honestly. Because I could. Because you let me. Because I grew up in a family where money solved everything, and I never learned that people aren't commodities." She took a shaky breath. "And because I was jealous." "Jealous?" "Of your relationship with Oliver. With Daniel. They both love you so much, so easily. And I felt like I had to compete with you. So I made you small. Made you less than. If you were just the help, just the person who cooked and cleaned and paid bills, then I didn't have to acknowledge that you were important." The insight was surprising and painful. "I never wanted to compete with you, Vanessa. I know that now. But at the time, everything felt like competition. My friends' houses, their husbands' careers, their children's achievements, I was constantly measuring and always coming up short. So I tried to control what I could control. Including you." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of her confession hanging between us. "I appreciate the apology," I said finally. "And I believe you mean it. But Vanessa, I can't come back." "I know. I'm not asking you to. I'm just asking, hoping, that maybe someday you can forgive me. And maybe we can build something new. Not me as the controlling daughter-in-law and you as the exploited mother-in-law, but just two women trying to do right by the people they love." "That would be nice," I admitted. "But it'll take time." "I understand. I just wanted you to know I'm working on it. On me. On being better." After we hung up, I sat with the conversation for a long time. Vanessa's apology had seemed genuine, but words were easy. Actions would tell the real story. Still, it was a start. As November approached, the question of Thanksgiving loomed. Ruth invited me to her daughter's house in Chicago. Helen invited me to join her and her neighbors for a potluck. Daniel cautiously asked if I'd consider joining them, just family, no pressure. I surprised myself by saying yes to Daniel. "Really?" He sounded shocked and hopeful. "Really? But I have conditions." "Anything." "I arrive at noon and leave by 6. I bring dishes I want to bring, not dishes I'm assigned. And if it becomes uncomfortable, I leave without drama or guilt." "Deal." "Absolutely deal." "Is Vanessa okay with this?" "She's the one who suggested it, actually. Said Thanksgiving wouldn't be right without you." The day arrived with typical November weather, grey skies and a chill in the air that promised winter. I'd made my contribution to the meal, William's famous stuffing recipe and a cranberry sauce that had been his mother's. Traditional dishes that felt like bringing him to the table with me. Ruth drove me to Daniel's house, insisting on staying in the car until I was inside. "Just in case you need a quick getaway," she said, only half joking. Daniel answered the door, and for a moment we just looked at each other. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, sweetheart." He pulled me into a hug, and I let myself sink into it. Whatever else had happened, he was still my son. I still loved him. The house looked different somehow, less cluttered, less ostentatious. The designer throw pillows were gone from the couch. The expensive candles had been replaced with simple ones. Small changes, but noticeable. Grandma. Oliver barreled into me, wrapping his arms around my legs. Hi, my love. I scooped him up, breathing in his little boy scent. I've missed you. I missed you more. Want to see my new dinosaurs? Daddy got them at the normal store, not the expensive store. The normal store comment made Daniel wince, but I just smiled. I'd love to see them. Vanessa appeared from the kitchen, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, so different from her usual put-together appearance. Her face was uncertain, almost shy. Margaret. Thank you for coming. Thank you for having me. We stood in awkward silence until Oliver grabbed my hand. Grandma, come see. The afternoon unfolded more smoothly than I'd expected. We cooked together, Vanessa and I working side by side in the kitchen, not as adversaries but as two women preparing a meal. Daniel managed the turkey, Oliver helped by stirring things and taste testing. Dinner was simple by previous standards. No fancy place settings or designer centerpieces. Just family, sitting together, sharing food. Should we go around and say what we're grateful for? Oliver asked, clearly having learned this at school. That's a wonderful idea, I said. Oliver went first. I'm grateful for dinosaurs and Daddy and Mommy and Grandma and my new friend Marcus at school. Daniel went next. I'm grateful for family. For second chances. For people who love me enough to tell me when I'm wrong. He looked at me when he said it. Vanessa was next, and she took a moment before speaking. I'm grateful for growth. For therapy. A small laugh. For learning that having less stuff doesn't mean having less value. Then it was my turn. I looked around the table at these three people. My son, my daughter-in-law, my grandson. Flawed people, all of us. Messy and complicated and trying. I'm grateful for boundaries, I said. For knowing when to stay and when to go. For understanding that love doesn't mean sacrifice, it means respect. I smiled. And I'm grateful for this meal and this moment and the fact that we're all still here, still trying. After dinner, while Daniel and Vanessa cleaned up, I played with Oliver in the living room. He showed me his dinosaur collection, making them fight elaborate battles. Grandma, do you like your new house? I do, sweetie. Is it better than here? The question was so innocent, but so loaded. It's different. But yes, for me, it's better. Because you have your own room with a window. Out of the mouths of babes. Yes, that's part of it. When I'm big, I'm going to have my own house with lots of windows. And you can visit whenever you want. That sounds perfect. At 6 o'clock, as promised, I prepared to leave. Daniel walked me out to where Ruth was waiting, her car idling at the curb. Thank you for coming, Mom. It meant a lot. To all of us. Thank you for having me. It was nice. Can we do it again? Not just holidays, but regular dinners. I considered. Let's start with once a month. Sunday dinners, maybe. I'll take it. He hugged me again. I love you. And I'm still sorry. I'll probably be sorry for the rest of my life. I love you too. And Daniel. I forgive you. Not completely, not yet. But I'm working on it. In the car, Ruth looked at me critically. How was it? Better than expected. Still complicated, but better. Good. Because I made eggnog, and you're coming back to my place to tell me everything. I laughed, a real laugh, from deep in my belly. Deal. Winter settled over Riverside with characteristic gloom, grey skies and early darkness and a cold that seeped into bones. But inside Riverside Gardens, life continued warm and bright. I'd established traditions now. Tuesday mornings with Emma, who was now reading at grade level and had stopped being assigned to me, but asked if I could keep coming anyway. You're my special reading friend, Mrs. Chen. Thursday yoga with Dorothy and the gang, my flexibility improving incrementally. I still couldn't touch my toes, but I could reach my shins now, which felt like progress. Friday book club, where we'd moved on to Kill a Mockingbird, and the discussions about justice and morality sometimes lasted well past the official end time. Saturday morning coffee with Helen, sharing our weeks and our worries and occasionally our dreams. Sunday dinners with Daniel, Vanessa, and Oliver became a monthly occurrence, sometimes at their house, sometimes at mine. The meals were simpler now, the conversation more honest. Slowly, incrementally, we were rebuilding trust. Daniel finished his debt repayment to me in January, the final $4,000 arriving with a note, "This doesn't make us even. Nothing can do that. But it's a start. Love, your son." By March, I'd saved enough to buy a new mattress, my first truly new piece of furniture. Helen helped me pick it out, and we celebrated its delivery with cheap champagne and takeout Chinese food. To sleeping well, Helen toasted. To new beginnings at 66, I added. May there be many more. Spring arrived tentatively in April, with bulbs pushing through the earth in the community garden and trees beginning to bud. I'd signed up for a plot in the garden, just a small one, 4 by 4 feet, and spent Saturday mornings planting tomatoes and herbs and flowers. "You're good at this," Maria observed, watching me work. "My husband and I used to garden together. It feels good to do it again." He passed 2 years ago. Cancer. "I'm sorry." Maria was quiet for a moment. "My husband passed 8 years ago. Heart attack. One day he was fine, the next he was gone." "Does it get easier?" "Not easier. Different. You learn to carry it differently." She smiled. "And you find new things to fill the space, gardens, friends, morning coffee routines. New lives." Exactly. In May, the Senior Center organized a spring art show, displaying members' work in the community room. I submitted 3 watercolors, the courtyard garden, a portrait of Emma reading, and an abstract piece I'd done on a particularly emotional day. To my shock, the abstract piece sold, for $100, to George from 3A. "It spoke to me," he explained. "All that color and motion and feeling. It's how life feels sometimes, isn't it? Beautiful chaos." "That's exactly what it is," I said, amazed that someone understood. The $100 went into my savings account, and I felt a ridiculous pride seeing it there. Money I'd earned from my own work, not from William's pension or Social Security, but from my own creativity. Maybe this was what the next chapter of my life could be. Small joys accumulated, small successes celebrated, a life built on my own terms. Things were good until they weren't. In June, Daniel called with news, "Vanessa and I are separating." I sat down heavily on my couch. What happened? A lot of things. We tried, Mom. We really did. Counseling, budgeting, working on communication, but some damage is too deep. His voice was tired but calm. "We're going to co-parent Oliver, split custody, stay civil. But the marriage is over." "I'm sorry, Daniel." "Are you? Honestly?" I thought about it. "I'm sorry you're hurting. But I'm not sorry you're choosing yourself. That's what my therapist says too." He gave a hollow laugh. "Vanessa blames you, by the way." "Me?" "Says if you hadn't left, if you'd stayed and kept being the buffer between us, we could have made it work." He said it matter-of-factly, but I heard the edge beneath. I told her that was bullshit. That blaming you for our marriage falling apart was just another way of not taking responsibility. How'd she take that? Not well. There's a lot of anger right now. At me, at herself, at the situation. But she's staying in therapy, which is good. And Oliver? He's okay. Kids are resilient. We're doing the whole mommy and daddy still love you speech, keeping his routine stable. He'll adapt. After hanging up, I sat with the news. Part of me felt guilty, as if my leaving had been the domino that set everything else in motion. But Ruth's voice echoed in my head, "You didn't cause their problems. You just stopped being the solution." 2 days later, Vanessa called. I almost didn't answer. "Margaret." Her voice was cold, controlled. "We need to talk." "About what?" "About how you destroyed my marriage." I took a breath, steadying myself. "Vanessa, I didn't. You did. You left, and everything fell apart. The balance we had, the system that worked, You disrupted it by being selfish. Selfish. Vanessa, you were draining my life savings. We were family. Her control broke, voice rising to a shout. Family helps each other. Family sacrifices. But you couldn't do that, could you? You had to run away and play victim and turn Daniel against me. I didn't turn Daniel against you. You did that yourself. No, you poisoned him. Made him think we were abusing you, made him feel guilty for normal family dynamics. And now my marriage is over, and it's your fault. Vanessa. I kept my voice level. I understand you're hurting. I understand you're angry. But I am not responsible for your marriage. The problems between you and Daniel existed long before I moved in. I was just convenient, a distraction from the real issues. That's not true. It is true. And deep down, you know it. You're angry at me because it's easier than being angry at yourself. Silence. Then, how dare you? I dare because I'm done being afraid. I'm done accepting blame that isn't mine. I'm done shrinking myself so other people feel bigger. My voice strengthened. I'm sorry your marriage is ending. I truly am. But it's not my responsibility to fix, and it wasn't my presence that broke it. Daniel was right. You have changed. You've become hard. No, Vanessa. I've become boundaried. There's a difference. She hung up without another word. I sat on my couch, hands shaking, heart pounding. But beneath the adrenaline, I felt something else, pride. I'd stood up for myself. I'd refused to accept blame. I'd been clear and firm and honest. I called Ruth. Vanessa just called me. And I told her the conversation. Ruth listened, then said simply, "Good for you." Good for me. Ruth, I might have just made everything worse. Or you might have finally established that you're not a doormat. Margaret, you can't control how Vanessa processes her divorce. You can only control how you respond to being blamed for it. I just wish. Wish what? That you'd stayed. That you'd let them drain you dry. That you'd sacrificed your entire future so Vanessa could avoid dealing with her marriage problems. Ruth's voice softened. Sweetheart, you did the right thing. Leaving was right. Setting boundaries is right. Refusing to accept blame is right. Don't let Vanessa's pain make you doubt that. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation, wondering if I could have been gentler, kinder, more understanding. But then I thought about the leftovers. The storage room. The $32,000. The way I'd felt, small and used and invisible. And I knew Ruth was right. I'd done what I needed to do. The consequences were not my burden to carry. Summer arrived in full force, bringing heat and humidity and long, light-filled evenings. The community garden exploded with growth, my tomatoes heavy on the vine, my basil fragrant and full. Daniel and I maintained our Sunday dinners, now held at my apartment since he'd moved to a smaller place following the separation. He looked tired but lighter somehow, as if releasing the weight of a failing marriage had freed something in him. "How's Oliver handling it?" I asked one Sunday while we prepped dinner together. "He's doing okay. Better than I expected, honestly. We're doing week on, week off custody. This week he's with Vanessa." "And how's that going?" Daniel paused, knife hovering over a tomato. "She's trying. Really trying. She's in therapy, she's cut back her hours at work to spend more time with him, she's different." "Different how?" "Softer. More present. Less obsessed with appearances." He resumed chopping. "Losing everything, me, you, her perfect life image, it broke something open in her. She's dealing with it now instead of covering it with shopping and status." "That's good." "It is. I'm glad for her, honestly. She deserves to be happy, even if it's not with me." "Very mature of you." "Well, my therapist says I'm making progress." He smiled wryly. "Turns out I had my own issues to deal with. Who knew?" "I knew," I said gently. "Yeah, you did. I should have listened sooner." Oliver came over on Daniel's weeks, and we'd fallen into new rhythms. He'd stay Saturday night sometimes, sleeping in my second bedroom on a child-sized air mattress that Helen's grandson had outgrown. We'd make breakfast together, visit the community garden, read books, play in the courtyard. It was everything I'd wanted at Daniel's house, time with my grandson, but on my terms, in my space, without resentment or obligation clouding it. "Grandma, can I have a garden spot too?" Oliver asked one Saturday in July. "I think we can arrange that. What do you want to grow?" "Carrots. Because Bugs Bunny eats carrots." We planted carrot seeds in a corner of my plot, Oliver carefully patting dirt over them. "How long until they grow?" "A couple of months. We'll have to be patient and water them every week." "I can be patient," he said seriously. Then, 30 seconds later, "Are they growing yet?" I laughed. "Not yet, buddy." The carrots became his project. Every visit, first thing, he'd run to the garden to check on them. Water them, pull tiny weeds, narrate his hopes for them. "Grow, carrots, grow. Be delicious." Watching him, I realized this was what family should be, light and joyful and freely given, not heavy with obligation and resentment. In August, I got a surprise call from Marcus, Ruth's nephew. "Margaret, I have a proposition for you." That sounds ominous. Not ominous. Lucrative. He explained, he was starting a financial education program for seniors, teaching them to recognize and avoid financial abuse. "You'd be perfect as a co-facilitator. Share your story, help others avoid the same pitfalls. It would be a few hours a week, and I could pay you $25 an hour." $25 an hour. Not a fortune, but enough to make a difference. Enough to add a cushion to my budget. I'd need to think about it. Sharing my story publicly. No pressure. But Margaret, you have something valuable to offer, lived experience and hard-won wisdom. Think about it. I did think about it. 4 days, I wrestled with the idea of exposing my story, my shame, my mistakes. But then I thought about Emma, struggling with reading until someone gave her the help she needed. I thought about other elderly people, lonely and vulnerable, making the same mistakes I'd made. I called Marcus back. "I'll do it." The program launched in September. We held workshops at various senior centers around the city, teaching people about financial boundaries, elder abuse red flags, how to protect assets while still helping family. The first time I shared my story, standing in front of 20 strangers, telling them about the leftovers and the storage room and the bank account that had dwindled, I nearly backed out. My voice shook. My hands trembled. But then a woman in the back row raised her hand. "That's exactly what my daughter is doing to me." I thought I was crazy for feeling used. "You're not crazy," I said. "You're being exploited. And you deserve better." After the workshop, 5 people came up to talk to me privately. They all had similar stories, adult children or relatives who'd moved them in and then slowly taken over their finances. Promises of care that had become demands. Love that had curdled into obligation. "What do I do?" an elderly man asked, tears in his eyes. "She's my only daughter. If I set boundaries, she'll cut me off from my grandchildren." "That's a form of emotional blackmail," I said gently. "And it's not okay. You deserve respect. Your grandchildren deserve to know you as a person, not just a resource." I gave him Marcus's card and watched him leave, hoping he'd find the courage to change his situation. By October, the workshops had become a regular thing, twice a month at different locations. The small income helped, but more than that, the purpose helped. I was turning my painful experience into something useful. Something that mattered. October brought crisp air and the brilliant colors of fall. In the community garden, Oliver's carrots were finally ready to harvest. "Can we pick them today, Grandma? Please?" We knelt together in the dirt, and I showed him how to loosen the soil around each carrot before pulling. The first one came up small and twisted, but Oliver's face glowed with pride. "I grew that." "You did, sweetheart. All by yourself." We harvested a dozen carrots total, washing them at the outdoor spigot. They weren't perfect, some were forked, some were tiny, one was frankly weird-looking. But they were real carrots, grown from seeds Oliver had planted with his own hands. Back in my apartment, we made carrot soup together. Oliver stood on a chair, carefully dropping carrot rounds into the pot under my supervision. When it was done, we ate it together at my little dining table, Oliver declaring it the best soup in the whole world. Daniel joined us for dinner that night, and Oliver immediately launched into the story of the carrots, the planting, the waiting, the harvest. And Grandma says next year we can plant tomatoes and carrots and maybe beans. That sounds wonderful, Daniel said, catching my eye over Oliver's head. His expression was soft, grateful. After Oliver fell asleep on the couch mid-cartoon, Daniel and I sat on my small balcony, watching the courtyard below. The evening was cool, requiring sweaters, but peaceful. You're good for him, Daniel said. This life you've built, it's stable and calm and full of simple joys. He needs that. You provide plenty for him too. I try. But I'm still figuring it out, the single dad thing, the smaller apartment, the tighter budget. He smiled wryly. Turns out living within your means is hard when you've never done it before. How are the finances? Better. Not great, but better. The credit cards are paid off finally. I'm saving a small amount each month. It's weird, having less stuff but feeling richer somehow. That's wisdom. Hard-won wisdom. He was quiet for a moment. Mom, I've been thinking about Dad a lot lately. Wondering what he'd think of all this. What do you think he'd think? Probably that I'm an idiot who needed to learn the hard way. Daniel laughed softly. But also maybe that I'm finally becoming a man he could be proud of. Not because I'm successful or wealthy, but because I'm taking responsibility. Doing the work. He would be proud of you. And so am I. Even after everything. Especially after everything. It's easy to love someone who's perfect. It takes real love to love someone through their mistakes and their growth. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the courtyard lights flicker on as darkness settled. Tomorrow Oliver would go back to Vanessa for her week. Monday I'd volunteer at the school, have coffee with Helen, maybe work on a new painting. Tuesday was the next financial literacy workshop. Life would continue in its gentle, purposeful rhythm. Mom. Yes. Thank you. For what? For loving me enough to leave. For teaching me what boundaries look like. For showing me that family doesn't mean sacrifice, it means respect. His voice was thick with emotion. I'm sorry I had to learn it by hurting you. But I'm grateful you gave me the chance to learn it at all. I reached over and squeezed his hand. You're welcome, sweetheart. The following June, almost exactly a year after I'd moved into Riverside Gardens, the community held its annual summer barbecue. The courtyard was decorated with lights and streamers, tables laden with potluck dishes, music playing from someone's Bluetooth speaker. I'd contributed William's famous potato salad, the recipe I'd made for every family gathering for 40 years. Helen brought her signature brownies. Maria made tamales. George grilled burgers. It was a feast of communal effort and shared joy. Emma came with her mother, surprising me. She'd graduated to 3rd grade and had been moved out of the remedial reading program. Mrs. Chen. She ran to hug me. Look what I got. She held up a chapter book, something from a popular middle grade series. I'm reading this all by myself. That's wonderful, Emma. Her mother smiled at me. Thank you for everything you did with her. You changed her life. She did the work. I just helped a little. But watching Emma run off to play with Oliver and some other kids, I felt a deep satisfaction. I'd made a difference. My time mattered. I mattered. Daniel and Vanessa were both there, separately, but cordially. They'd settled into a co-parenting rhythm that seemed to work. Vanessa had brought her new boyfriend, a quiet man who worked in technology and seemed genuinely kind. Daniel was dating someone too, a paralegal from his firm named Lisa who had a good laugh and didn't care about designer handbags. Your family's complicated, Helen observed, watching the dynamics. All families are complicated. True. But yours is dealing with it honestly. That's something. As evening fell and the party continued, I found myself standing at the edge of the courtyard, taking it all in. The friends I'd made, Helen and Maria and George and Dorothy and so many others. The life I'd built, volunteering, teaching, creating, connecting. The relationship I'd rebuilt with Daniel, healthier and more honest than before. The joy of being Oliver's grandmother without the resentment and exhaustion. This life was smaller than the one I'd imagined during my 40 years with William. Smaller than the one I'd briefly had at Daniel and Vanessa's, with the big house and the marble countertops and the illusion of family closeness. But it was mine. Truly, completely, unapologetically mine. Ruth appeared at my elbow with 2 glasses of lemonade. What are you thinking about? Leftovers. Random. Why leftovers? I smiled. Because a year ago, Vanessa told me not to forget to eat the leftovers in the fridge. And it was that moment, that small, thoughtless comment, that made me realize I was being treated like I wasn't worth the fresh food. Like I should be grateful for scraps. And now I understand that I was never leftovers. I was always the whole meal. I clinked my glass against hers. I just had to remember it. To remembering, Ruth said. To remembering. We drank our lemonade and watched the party continue. Children playing, adults laughing, community thriving. The June evening was perfect, warm but not hot, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of grilled food and Helen's roses. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Next workshop has 30 people registered. Your story is helping so many. Proud of you. Another text, this one from Emma's mother. Emma wants to know if you'll help her start a book club at school next year. She says you make reading magic. Another from Daniel. Love you, Mom. Thank you for this party, this community, this example of how to live well. You're my hero. I read the messages, feeling my eyes prick with tears. Not sad tears, but grateful ones. At 66, I'd lost my husband, lost half my savings, lost my illusions about family and obligation and what love should look like. But I'd found myself. Found purpose. Found community. Found the courage to say no, to set boundaries, to demand respect. Found that sometimes love means leaving. Sometimes family means distance. Sometimes the most generous thing you can do is stop giving pieces of yourself away. Oliver ran up, grass-stained and grinning. Grandma, come play tag. You're on my team. I don't know if these old legs can run. Please. I looked at his eager face, at the courtyard full of people who'd become my chosen family, at the life I'd built from the ashes of loss and betrayal. Okay, I said, setting down my lemonade. Let's play. And I ran, laughing, into the warm June evening, my grandson's hand in mine, surrounded by people who valued me for exactly who I was. Not leftovers. Never leftovers. The whole, perfect, complete meal. 5 years after I moved to Riverside Gardens, I celebrated my 70th birthday with a party in the community room. The space was packed, friends from the senior center, neighbors from the building, former workshop participants, Emma, now 12 and still an avid reader, Daniel and Lisa, married now, Vanessa and her husband, and Oliver. Oliver, who at 8 years old was confident and kind and loved visiting his grandma's apartment where he had his own room, his own garden plot, and a shelf full of books we'd read together. Speech, someone called out. I stood, embarrassed but pleased, and looked around at all these faces. So many people whose lives had touched mine, who'd made this chapter of my life rich and full. 5 years ago, I began. I was living in a storage room with no windows, eating leftovers, watching my savings disappear, and feeling invisible. I was 65 and felt like my life was over, that I'd become nothing more than a burden and a bank account for other people to use. The room was quiet, everyone listening. But then something shifted. I remembered that I mattered. That my needs, my future, my dignity were important. And I made the hardest decision I've ever made. I chose myself. I looked at Daniel, who was watching with wet eyes. It wasn't easy. It hurt people I loved. It disrupted what we'd all pretended was working. But it was necessary. And it led to this, I gestured around the room, to a life I never imagined I could have. A life full of purpose and connection and joy. To all of you who've been part of this journey, thank you. You've shown me that family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up, who respect your boundaries, who value you for who you are. I raised my glass of champagne, the real stuff, not the cheap kind. I could afford it now, carefully budgeted into my life. Here's to second acts. To finding yourself at 65, 70, 80, 90. To understanding that you're never too old to start over, to set boundaries, to demand respect. And here's to remembering, always, always remembering, that you're not leftovers. You're the whole meal. The room erupted in applause and cheers. Oliver jumped up to hug me, followed by Daniel, then a cascade of others. Later, as the party wound down and people began to leave, Daniel pulled me aside. "Mom, I have something for you." He handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $4,000. "What's this?" "Interest. On the money we took. I calculated what you would have earned if it had stayed in your savings account, properly invested. It's not much, but..." "Daniel, you paid me back years ago." "I paid back the principal. This is the interest. The opportunity cost of what we stole." His voice was firm. "I want to do this right. Completely right." I looked at the check, at my son's earnest face, and felt a swell of pride. This was who he'd become, a man who understood not just the letter of restitution, but the spirit. "Thank you," I said, hugging him. "For this, and for everything else. For doing the work. For becoming someone I'm proud to know, not just as my son, but as a person." "I learned from the best," he said. That night, alone in my apartment, the word still thrilled me after 5 years, I sat at my small desk and opened my journal. The pages were filled now with 5 years of entries, struggles and triumphs, small joys and hard-won wisdom. I turned to a fresh page and wrote, 70 years old today. William, if you're somehow reading this over my shoulder, you'd be amazed at the life I've built. It's not the one we planned together, that ended when you left me. But it's a good one. An honest one. A life where I matter, where my voice counts, where I'm respected and valued. I spent 6 months being treated like leftovers, like something to be used up and discarded. But I learned that I was never leftovers. I was always the whole meal. I just needed to remember. Here's what I know now at 70 that I didn't know at 65. Boundaries aren't selfish, they're survival. Family that takes advantage isn't family, it's exploitation. You're never too old to start over. Small joys accumulated become a beautiful life. Purpose matters more than possessions. Community chosen is often stronger than family given. You can forgive without forgetting, reconcile without returning. Your worth isn't measured by what you give away, it's inherent in who you are. Most importantly, you're not leftovers. You never were. You're the whole, magnificent, irreplaceable meal. And finally, you're enough. Just as you are. Right now. At any age. I closed the journal and looked out my window at the courtyard below. The party decorations were still up, lights twinkling in the darkness. Tomorrow they'd be taken down, and life would return to its gentle rhythm. Volunteering, teaching, creating, connecting, living. Not the life I'd planned, but a life I'd chosen. And that made all the difference.